Please join me in welcoming Dan to the podium.
We're here to talk about my favorite topic, rural life.
Hey.
It sucks. It sucks. It does. I thought it was just an Alberta thing, but here we are talking about it in the interior of BC too. And not only that, but Gordon has brought in experts from right across the whole nation to share how rural life sucks for them too. I don't believe that for an instant, and I don't think you do either, or you wouldn't be here. I'm going to share a story with you about an amazing project. A game, really. We'll call it the Keeping It Rural game. And the rules to this game are really, really simple. It's about you and I being accountable for the choices that we make and the results that we get. And it's about being willing to work together with some other leaders. Now, these are rules that our forefathers embraced back in the day when they were forming our communities. And I think it's about time that we start to really apply these rules again. Not just some of the time when it kind of feels okay, but all of the time. So I'm going to share a story with you. I come from and we'll use this as a metaphor for what you can do to add some real vibrancy to your community. I come from a little community called Sangudo, about an hour west and a little bit north of Edmonton. Who's been to Sangudo? Did you go there on purpose? Amazing entrance right off of Highway 43, and beautiful physical location where the Pembina River runs on three sides of the hamlet. But once you get right into the little hamlet itself, about 380 people, well, you're not going to find it in a traveler's guide of places you must see. Used to be an amazing community, hustling, bustling. We had 5 grain elevators, 2 machine dealerships, 2 car dealerships, grocery stores, hardware stores, lumberyard, pharmacy, clothing stores, dance halls, hotels. Man, people had a real sense of belonging and community. And they worked together, and they celebrated together, and they supported each other's businesses, because that's how community was formed back in the day. Well, over the years, things started to change as we got caught up in progress and business, and infrastructure improved, the roads got better, technology improved, so it got easier to travel, and all of a sudden the grain elevators disappeared. Businesses started closing down, some of them moving to bigger centers. The youth, they were heading off to the city as soon as they could. Well, that's a good thing, get rid of the little buggers. But then they weren't coming back. And retail leakage became rampant. Retail leakage. Now, even now, people will jump in their big 4-wheel drive dually, and they'll drive right past our own local shops, and they'll drive 3 hours, $100 in fuel, to go to the nearest Walmart where they can save 20 cents on the staples of life. You know, the things we absolutely need to survive, like, you know, pop and chips. Now, this happened slowly over a period of time. I don't think most people really were conscious of what was going on. It was just progress, it's just normal. And the attitude to business? What do you mean you want to start a business here? Don't you see this is a dying town? Don't you know everybody does all their business in Whitewater or Edmonton? And you think tourism is a good thing to do? Are you nuts? Not here, there's nothing for people to see in Sangudo. And don't you know it's tough times? The only people who can afford to travel these days are those wealthy people. You know, the ones who go to conferences in Salmon Arm. And then we had a crisis. In 2005, Northern Gateway Regional School Division threatened to close our high school. Ooh. Small rural community, you know that can be devastating. Well, all of a sudden people woke up and they were ticked off. A meeting was called and they came out in carloads and truckloads to figure out what they could do what could be done to keep the school open. Well, actually, the truth be known, most people were there to whine and blame and complain because they should do something. Sound familiar? Well, I call this a crisis, and yet, I mean, it wasn't a flood, it wasn't a tsunami, it wasn't an earthquake, nobody was dying, there was no devastation, but the perception was this was a major crisis, a big deal. It's amazing how people will step up to the plate when they perceive that their backs are against the wall. Well, out of this meeting, about 20 people stepped forward that were going to do something to keep our school open. Really, there were only 2 or 3 leaders, but the rest were keen, avid followers, and that's a really critical, important piece for rural development. Now, these 2 or 3 leaders, they invested a couple of years trying to figure out ways to keep the high school open. And they came up with some really, really great ideas, some feasible ideas. One was to create a rodeo-themed school, which would tie in really well with our rural area. Another was to attract foreign students to come into our community to take their schooling there. Another one was to have a mobile trade center, very much needed. Great idea, all very feasible. But any change to the school system needed school board approval. And well, that just wasn't going to happen. The school board wasn't going to budge, and it got nasty. It even went to a legal fight, and fighting just never leads to a win-win situation. Well, these leaders, they figured out, what the heck, we lost that one. We're not going to go any further with that. They set their egos aside and decided to focus more on the broader community. What could we do to help the bigger community? Which led to the formation of Sangudo and District Community Development Council, a society. Now, right at that point, just perfect timing, we learned about a program that was being administered by Alberta Recreation and Parks Association. It was called ACE Communities, stands for Active, Creative, Engaged. It was a leadership and community development program. They were just getting it rolling. They needed some pilot communities. Sangudo's application was accepted, and away we went. Now, the first thing that happened with that, we had a big kickoff evening meeting where we invited everybody in the community to hear this star from afar, Ian Hill, come out and get people excited and fired up about this community project. Ian got people fired up. Well, he ticked some people off too, because he said this. In other words, if there is a student in my community that is not receiving a proper education, that is a direct reflection of me. If there are youth involved in drugs and alcohol, illegal activities, that's a direct reflection of me. If there are families that don't have safe, comfortable housing, they don't have enough to eat, that's a direct reflection of me. If there are businesses closing down, that's a direct reflection of me. Ouch, that hurts. Think about your community. He also used this quotation. I will not refuse to do something that I can do. Sometimes you just got to take the matter into your own hands. So let's just pause for a moment and reflect on how all of this so far relates to you and your community. First thing is that we know that change is going to happen. It has in the past, it's still going to happen as we move forward. So why not be a part of the change? In fact, make the change the way you want it to be. Have that vision of where you want to go. You know, it's pretty easy to get into whining and complaining, but it's just a waste of time and effort and energy. And we all know that if you hang around with whiners and complainers, their numbers go up by 1. You know, it can be really easy when things are just coasting along, everything's going fine and dandy. It's pretty easy to just expect that, well, you know, if things go a little rough, the government's going to fix it up for us, or an outside developer is going to come in and save the day, or some nonprofit organization is going to step up to the plate. Somebody else is going to do something. Complacency. You know, it's like being the ostrich with your head stuck in the sand. And if your head is stuck in the sand, we all know there's another part of your anatomy about this height. Perfect spot for crisis can be that kick. Now, I'm not suggesting you go start a crisis in your community. Because what comes out of crisis is often reactive. However, if you can find a common and keenly felt need, something that's going on that just ticks some people off, People will step up to the plate and get behind a really great cause. You know, fighting, as in our story, it's a waste of energy and resources. It depletes faith and trust and hope in the community, and it destroys trust. And without trust, you've got nothing. You know, I've been playing this Keeping It Rural game for a long time in many different communities, and I've seen some really good programs and initiatives that have, well, they either haven't got off the ground, or maybe they got kicked off and then they just kind of fizzled out. Primarily because they were driven by one leader. You know, people thought that one person was going to make it happen. Well, either that person, you know, ran out of energy, or maybe they couldn't get enough buy-in from the community, or maybe their ego got involved and it became about them, and so people wouldn't follow them. It's not sustainable. And yet, if you can have a group of at least 2 or 3 core leaders in your community, competent, courageous leaders, people with big shoulders, this is when things really start to happen. These people, leaders like this, they're committed to something that's much bigger than themselves. This is about quality of life in your community. It's about not necessarily growth, but it's about what Brian talked about this morning. It's about vibrancy, health, wealth, well-being in the community. These kinds of leaders are focused on that. They have huge energy themselves, and if one person gets the wind knocked out of their sails, well, the other couple people can help them to pick that up again. And when they get going on a program and they get other people following, well, then they can really work together because it expands the energy for everybody. These kinds of leaders, huge trust in themselves and each other. They're accountable. They say what they're going to do. You won't find them whining around in the coffee shop. They invite mistakes. They know that they're going to screw up. And they know that some of the people they're working with are going to screw up. Cool deal. What a great way for innovation and creativity and to bring up some really great dialogue and change. These kinds of leaders, they're credible, they're passionate, they're persuasive, trustworthy. Humble people. If you go to one of these people, and you've probably got the names of a few on your tongue, if you go to these people and say, "Are you a leader?" most of them will say, "No, I just did what needed to be done." There are leaders like this in your community and in my community. Not just 1, 2, or 3, or a half dozen. I invite you over the next few days, or definitely when you get back to your community, to go to some of these leaders. And maybe it's you, look in the mirror. Thank these people. Give them a hug, shake their hand, pat them on the back. They sure as heck don't need that kind of recognition, but it always helps. And it helps to get things going. You know, as a coach, I like to ask my clients some tough questions, ones that help people to maybe feel a little uncomfortable and to find their own best answers. So I've got a question for you. Of these points right here, which one of those are you going to apply now? Because that's how things start to happen. So what happened for us? Out of that, when we got involved with this ACE Communities, we also had access to 2 fabulous coaches. Now these coaches helped us to get together on a couple different occasions with a group of about 25 or 30 people from across our community to do a scanning exercise. Now this exercise was to help us to identify and appreciate some of the great things that were in our community, the great assets and resources that we had, and then to determine a project where we wanted to start. Now, one of the most powerful things that came out of that exercise was that we created a big, bright, powerful vision of what we wanted our community to be. What we wanted it to look like and sound like and feel like and smell like and taste like off into the future. A big vision. And people really got into this discussion, and we were moving around in the room and having these great conversations. We had a young local artist that had, well, we had 6 or 8 flip chart pages on the wall, and she was capturing words and drawing pictures about things that we wanted. You know, nice houses, nice businesses, clean streets, happy people of all ages working together, playing together, dancing, agriculture, industry. The whole works tied together. And people, one of the most powerful things is that people were engaged socially, emotionally, and intellectually into creating that vision. People really owned it. They took responsibility for it. That's where the passion comes from. And everybody even signed their name to it. You know, it's really fun to draw that picture out every now and then and to see what has happened and what continues to happen as a result of that little picture. So what can we draw from this for you? Pardon the pun. Draw. Some key pieces. The importance of having a coach or a facilitator. You know, when you're in the thick of things, sometimes you can be blind to opportunities that are right there in front of you. You can't see the forest for the trees. A good coach or a facilitator can ask some of those really juicy questions that opens up messy thinking, really messy thinking, that brings up all kinds of value-rich dialogue about what's really important for people. Not only for them to experience in their minds and their hearts, but how they want to feel about it. And when you come up with that, a good coach or facilitator, because they're not attached, they can also help you to broaden the experience out for everyone. Another key piece to this is the appreciative inquiry, you know, where you stop to identify and appreciate all the great things that are in your community. Recent successes, assets that you've got, resources that are there, potentials and opportunities that are there for you right then and there. And then how you can move forward with it. Then besides that, this appreciative inquiry piece that's really, really fun. And then to create this big, bright, compelling vision of what you want your community to be. And it's so important for people to be very honest about how they feel about this vision. Because as you're working together and creating this big picture of where you're going, it's like you're heading down the river. But if you've got some people that are bucking the stream, it definitely affects the results. And yet if you can hear how people are really feeling about it as well, there's always ways to reframe maybe the vision, or to reframe, address some of their concerns and their fears, so that you've got everybody moving the same direction. That's where sustainability comes from. This vision, it's fluid, it's dynamic. You can change it as economic conditions change. It's really important for the leaders especially to review this vision on a regular basis, to keep it fresh and alive, so that everybody knows where you're going with it. And keep it fun. I mean, this is a game. Most of us like to play games, and let's look at it that way and just make it a lot of fun. So let's stop for a moment, and I need your help with this. This appreciative inquiry piece can be really pivotal for creating some neat ideas and some neat growth in your community. We've heard about some amazing things that have happened just recently. So what about your community? What are some recent successes? What are some real opportunities? What are some potentials that are going on in your community right now? Shout them out.
Snow.
Snow. Yes. For what?
Snowmobiling.
Snowmobiling, skiing, cross-country, downhill, you betcha. What else?
Venture capital at Christina Lake.
Yeah, venture capital at Christina Lake. Great work going on there. What else is going on? Highway improvement? Perfect, excellent. Close by the community? Whoa, there's millions of dollars going by there every day on 4 wheels or 2 wheels or 6 wheels or 18 wheels. What else?
Farmers markets everywhere.
Farmers markets. Could one work in your community? Already is one? Yeah, right on. What else?
Professional development series in Fort St. John.
Yeah, professional development and the big women's seminar that you just had. Absolutely. Amazing stuff to bring people together, to get leaders working together, to spark some vibrancy to the community. And it brings people in. Cool deal. Give yourselves a big hand. So now my question. When specifically are you going to get together with a couple other leaders in your community and create this big, bright, powerful, compelling vision of where you want to go? I'd love to hear about it sometime within the next day or two. So what happened for us? Now, out of this scanning exercise, we determined that a recreation project was a good thing. It was all-inclusive, people of all ages, non-threatening, fun, and it fit really well with the direction of Alberta Recreation and Parks. Now, as I talked about leaders earlier, we didn't have one leader. We had a handful of them. One leader said, I think we need a new playground at the sports grounds. Another one said, yeah, and a skate park too. Another one said, yes, and let's put in a new horseshoe pitches and beach volleyball court. Another one said, yeah, let's clean up and paint the bleachers at the ball diamonds. Another one said, oh, I'll take care of getting some sponsors. Another one said, yes, and I'll take care of some invitations and marketing. Another one said, I'll make sure there's food there. And away it went. On one day in June of 2009, in this little dumpy hamlet, over 200 volunteers of all ages came out to do it all. Amazing day where we worked together, we played together, we feasted together, we celebrated together. A huge day of community building. People still talk about it today. And we're so appreciative of that East Communities program for that. But if you walked up the hill from the river valley and looked down Main Street, a different story. About half of the business buildings on Main Street sat vacant. Crap, what are we going to do about this? Well, these leaders changed their focus a little bit, and we knew that we could work together. But we wanted to find a way that we could be incubators for business, to try to get some more businesses going in our community, to help the economic situation. We didn't know how we were going to do it for sure, but we knew that if we worked together, all of us were smarter than one of us. And this was taking volunteering to a whole new level, because we were all willing to invest our time, our effort, our energy into doing something, but we were also going to be investing our hard-earned money into this, so there had to be some profit in it as well. We wanted to share the rewards and share the risks, but how in the world do you structure something like that? Well, right at that point, we learned about an award that was being administered by the Alberta Community and Cooperatives Association, the ACCA. And this award was for $50,000 of in-kind support to do a feasibility study to start a co-op. A co-op. Maybe that was our answer. We applied. Our application was accepted. And the first thing we did was hire the absolute best co-op developer you will find anywhere, Mr. Paul Sabai. Guy in the corner, you'll hear from him later. Paul got going with us, he helped us, and we got going on road trips and crunching numbers, feasibility studies, more research, number crunching. We looked at all kinds of things. We looked at starting an arts and culture venue in one of these buildings. That just wasn't going to work. We looked at supporting a bakery, a tire shop, seniors housing, a lumber yard, a hardware store. None of them quite fit. And then we learned that this place was for sale. Sangudo Custom Meat Packers, small abattoir right in the hamlet of Sangudo. We heard about abattoirs and the challenges with those earlier today. Well, the old guy that had been running this for about 25 years, he was slowing down, retiring. He wanted to sell it. The building was in tough shape. And he was at the point he was going to just shut the doors and walk away. But these two young guys in the picture, Jeff Singer and Kevin Meyer, two young guys in the community, they were sick and tired of their corporate jobs, but this is the business they wanted. But they couldn't get conventional bank financing. In fact, the bankers laughed them right out of their offices for a couple of reasons. Jeff was an accountant and working with a power company. Kevin was a plumber working in construction. They had no experience in this tricky industry. However, Kevin had been trained as a meat cutter many years previously and had worked in this shop for a short period of time. The other reason the bankers laughed these guys out of their offices was because they looked at the books from the old guy who had been running it, and he had been doing a little bit of left-pocket incorporated financing and slowing down, and it didn't look like a very feasible operation. But we believed in these guys. They were young, they were keen, they were excited, they'd done a bunch of great planning, and we believed in them, and we didn't want to lose this business in our livestock-based agricultural community. So in May of 2010, we incorporated Sangudo Opportunity Development Co-op. We went to local people, collected member loans so that we could buy the real estate and lend these guys some additional money to get started. We sat down with them and their business plan and worked out a really sweet 3-year lease agreement with them where they had a really small monthly lease payment. And then every quarter they would give us a bonus based on a percentage of their gross sales. It was a 3-year lease, and they had an option to buy out the real estate and pay out the loan at a very reasonable price at the end of that term. Now this was a cool deal because the idea was that it would keep them motivated to get in there and run this business the best they could, to grow it as quickly as they could. It was their business. We were just the SODC was just the landlord, and it worked. And it would keep SODC members motivated to support this business and to promote it to their friends and neighbors and everybody else they knew, because the more that we could drive business to them, the better they would do, the bigger would be their payments back to SODC, which would come back to members as a return. I bet you've never talked to a bank that would even enter into a conversation about an agreement like that. It worked really well. About a year after that happened, we learned that the local branch of the Canadian Legion was going to wind down their club and sell their big hall on Main Street. Dang! Another vacant building on Main Street. Two entrepreneurs in our community had been talking about opening up a restaurant, a coffee shop, very much needed in our community. It was perfect timing. So we collected more member loans from local people, bought the real estate, worked out a similar lease agreement as we used at the meat shop. They were able to get in there and renovate and clean it up and get the equipment, fix it all up, so that in December of 2011 they opened Connections Coffee House, a coffee shop, restaurant, community gathering place. We just finished the paperwork on that, and the guys from the meat shop came back to us. They had applied for and received 2 Growing Forward grants, government grants, and these were to do some major renovations to the structure of the building, to renew and to redo a bunch of the processing equipment and their processing room. And so in 3 weeks, with Christmas right in the middle of it, we collected another fairly large chunk of local capital to invest in that. So in 18 months, in this little hamlet, we collected and injected about $400,000 of local money to invest in the transition of a business from older entrepreneur to younger entrepreneurs, which is a challenge right across our country. One was a brand new business, and one was the expansion of an existing business. Now, $400,000 I mean, when you talk about, you know, the millions that some, I mean, that's pocket change for many of you. But for those of you that have been to Sangudo, well, you'll know that that's about what the rest of the hamlet is worth. Cool deal. So what do we have? Right now, Sangudo Custom Meat Packers is a world-class processing facility. They are attracting in animals from long distances in Alberta and even BC. They're certified to process organic meats. They went from a 2-person operation to now they're employing 14 people full-time. They are processing beef, pork, sheep, goats, lambs, bison, elk, deer, even rabbits. And they're buying local beef and local pork and retailing it into some of the top restaurants in Edmonton, getting some really great exposure. Connections Coffee House, it's a coffee shop, a restaurant. It's become a community gathering place. It's become an arts and culture hub for a big region. Not only do they do the meals and so on right in the restaurant, but they also cater to local businesses and events that are going on in the community. Local singers and songwriters perform there 4 or 5 times a year. It gives them a place to go where there's a big evening meal and a big celebration. The entrepreneur brings in other professional talent that performs on a monthly basis. And it's just become local artisans show and display their products there and sell them on a consignment basis. Now these businesses, tiny little investment really when you think about it, but what it does for the community is huge. Because of those investments, there are additionally thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of additional money every week that is circulated through a wide variety of businesses in the community. Tire shop, the garage, people getting gas, the liquor store, buying meals, you name it. The benefits are huge besides these things. And local people are engaged in how this works. And it sounds so easy, doesn't it? It's like we have born a child in Sangudo called SODC. It's 5 years old now. We've gone through the terrible 2s, the trying 3s, and we're lingering in the effing 4s. Huge legal and accounting fees that eat up the returns, and Some of our members that just don't get it, they've got this what's in it for me attitude and with a huge lack of communication, and I'll take responsibility for that. And most of the people in our community don't understand what's going on. It's crazy. It's had us stuck in a rut for a while. But now things are moving forward. We've got some young members that are starting to take control, and some new stuff that's happening. The 3-year lease with the meat shop, it transitioned where now SODC holds a mortgage on it, a long-term mortgage. Cool deal. The 3-year lease with Connections Coffee House has transitioned where the entrepreneur now owns the real estate outright. SODC has purchased 3 vacant residential lots in the hamlet and is starting on a housing project this summer. Some 3 or 4 more business ideas that are on the plate right now where we're looking for some entrepreneurs to take it over. It's amazing how all of a sudden things are starting to pick up again. But it took some work. As a result of this, now this was the first opportunity development co-op of its kind in Canada based on our current legislation. Bottom up, driven from the grassroots. We had some really great models to use as templates, primarily from Nova Scotia with their CDIF program, and we'll hear about it more. But as a result of the success of this, the Alberta Community and Cooperative Association has developed a comprehensive set of legal templates, accounting stuff, learning guides and videos and resources so that community leaders in other communities can do something very similar at a fraction of the cost and without the major hassles that we had. I'm sure that Paul might share a little bit more about that with you there. But let's stop for a moment here and reflect on how this relates to you in your rural community. Anything that you do, any kind of a program, any enhancement to your community to add vibrancy is going to take some work, some time, some effort, some energy. If it's paid people, well, that's really cool, but where does the money come from? The neat thing is that in our rural communities, some of the most valuable work that you and I can do is when we do it as a volunteer. It just really feels good. We know there are going to be challenges. Always have, always will. It's a really cool thing to invite challenges and to accept them and to even invite conflicting ideas. And when handled respectfully, they lead to all kinds of innovation and creativity, and oftentimes even more resources than you thought you had in the first place. Be solution creators rather than problem solvers. Might lead to the same result, but very different psychologically. We focus on solutions rather than problems. We've heard this before, strong, trusting relationships. Now is the time. There's never ever a reason to destroy a relationship. And now is the time to be building those strong relationships with other stakeholders, potential partners, people you can collaborate with. And you don't have to take all of the steam for what goes on, but allow somebody else to take the glory for it, but be there to support them and make it happen. Build relationships with government and economic development people and counties and municipalities, anybody. Now's the time to be making those really strong. We could not be where we are in our community, firstly, if it hadn't been for the support from ACCA, but then with the support we get from these other organizations and stakeholders in our community. Ask for what you want. Sounds so simple. And yet, I think most of us as rural folks are do-it-yourselfers. It's what we were taught since we were little kids. And yet, if we just ask for what we want, there are so much potential and resources and assets and money that is there just for the asking. I don't think money is ever the problem. It's about being able to ask for it in the right places and being able to find ways to leverage that. And besides that, I think most of us love to give and help and share. And if I don't ask you for your help, I'm stealing your opportunity to give me a gift. Different way to think of it, isn't it? And now's the time to, I don't know about your rural community, but our rural community, the average age seems to be increasing. Now's the time to be inviting and encouraging and mentoring the young folks and inviting them to come back in our community. They left maybe, but there seems to be a movement for those 30-some year-olds to come back to where their roots were, to get back into the rural communities, to grow a garden, to teach their kids, have them grow up in a small rural community. Now's the time to engage them, use their ideas, invite their ideas. The Old Boys Club should be dead and gone. This is about inviting them to share who they are and what they are, and give what they can. And invest for the future. Now, I don't mean just necessarily money. I mean, that's part of it. There's money for training and mentoring and all kinds of things, but investing in the research and going to conferences, learning that you can get, and information you can use. You know, playing this Keeping It Rural game, it's a fabulous game. The rules, again, pretty simple. Having the vision, being accountable, and leadership. You know, these are principles, these are rules that our forefather embraced. And it's easy for us. And it can be bloody frustrating to be playing this game, sitting on the sidelines, and expecting somebody else to win the game for you. It's just about time that you and I get our butts off the chair and actually make a movement, get doing something. So thanks for being here. So this playing, you know, I think that most of us as rural people, well, we have some things, some attributes that we sometimes forget to stop and appreciate. And yet they're so powerful. So what do you and I have that most urban folks don't?
Chainsaw.
A chainsaw, yeah. Wasn't what I was expecting, but absolutely. I think one of the things that we have that most urban folks don't is a real sense of community. Most of us in our rural communities have a keen and fierce sense of pride and belonging in community. We know what community is. We know who our neighbors and our friends are. And people make decisions and projects happen because people are doing what they can to improve the quality of life, to add vibrancy to the community. And a general rule of thumb is that most people do this kind of stuff out of a sense of contribution rather than for compensation. There's a big difference. And I think that rural life, it's rich and it teaches and models the very rules that we've talked about. The vision, the accountability, the leadership. Rules that will keep us going and building our communities, adding that vibrancy every single day from now on. How would you roll all that up in one word? I think it would be this. Might sound airy-fairy, hokey-pokey, but that's what it is. And I think that now is a really good time to share a little bit of this love. We need more of it in our world. Share a little bit of this love with the team of people who have done so much work to plan and organize and put on this great event. Let's give them a big hand. And we wouldn't get the results we're going to get if it weren't for those people on either side of you, for their commitment. So share a little love with them too. So this game of keeping it rural, I'm going to leave you with a quotation about how to play this keeping it rural game. And it's by a guy that I think knows a little bit about playing this game, the game of business, the game of life, the game of community. Here's the quotation. So my friends, the final question for you is this. When are you going to start playing this game